All right. Well, thanks for doing this for us. We like I sent you the those pictures of the theme and talked a little bit about what they're doing. Obviously, on the production side, they're on their own, but we were just looking for a few ideas on the content side because the theme of their project is to write a children's book aimed toward first through third graders that would inspire them to be a STEM teacher.
Inspire the
The,
first through
uh,
third
the
graders to
reader.
be a STEM teacher.
Yeah, to inspire the reader of a first through third grader to be a STEM teacher. So
Mm,
that's a theme they have, and it's got to be no more than 1,500 words and be read in 10 minutes or less.
mhm.
So I was just
Okay.
hoping to get a few ideas of things they could brainstorm, some of the things that inspired you, because obviously that's right in your wheelhouse since you had the very successful children's book that I did show them and we talked about.
Well, thanks.
So we're just looking for a few ideas of how you came up with your idea and some things that maybe they should think about as they're writing it. And they should like I don't know why they're not on yet, but they should be with us here any second, the other teacher and the other students. But we'll have all this available for them to see.
Okay. And this is a high school class, is that
Yes,
right?
it's just for
Okay.
it's a couple of ninth graders and a couple of seniors. This is for our state technology student association trying to go to our national competition this summer.
Mm, okay. Hmm. Promotes a career as a STEM teacher. That's very specific,
Yeah.
but okay. Okay.
All right. All right, all right. She's on. Sarah, this is Dina Smith. She's our head of our multimedia academy, and she also does the TSA with me. She has four students with her that are watching right now as well. And this is being recorded, Miss Smith. So, like I was just saying to Sarah about, I went over the theme, and just wanted to get some brainstorming and some creative ideas when it comes to writing a children's book, STEM based, because that's what one of the many things she's done and been so successful at.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Um, Now, but the main thing is just having some kind of and I know you said it is very specific. So what would you think would be a great place to just to start to get kind of a idea of do you think it should be more in your case it was a bedtime story, correct? In your book.
You can call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
So
wasn't specifically that, but yeah.
it was a mother talking to children.
Yeah.
So, do you think that's something that could work, or could it be more of a omniscient story type, or what type of writing and plot style do you think would be best for something like that?
Um, I think since like the purpose is to encourage teaching, I do think like a teacher student, dynamic in the book would speak to just that, right? And so like my book, I wanted to encourage kids. And so I wanted to make sure that there was people in there was someone in there encouraging a child, right? To sort of get that, that theme sort of highlighted. And so that's where I would go with it. Perhaps a student talking to or a teacher talking to their student about their own career and what inspired them, to be a STEM teacher, and I think, Grant, you can even tie in your own experiences, what inspired you to be a teacher and sort of, get that across as well. I think the more autobiographical or like realistic it appears, the more inspirational it can be. So that's kind of how I would tackle that.
Yeah, and I did briefly go over what you wrote, but in your book, Stemming from Blackness, if I'm not mistaken, it was a mother talking to her children
Mhm.
about how they could become successful Black STEM leaders, especially females. Now,
Right.
you said you didn't even do any of the illustrations or anything, but just from the content side, it was a really cool concept about how like you said, they used previous experience and things other people had done to inspire them to get to that next spot. Hold on, she's saying she's having trouble
Mhm.
hearing us. Give me 1 second. Let me turn it up. Ms. Smith, is that better?
I'm not sure if it's on your end or mine. I'm trying to get my volume to go to my board so they won't be trying to
Okay.
listen to my laptop. Hold on 1 second.
All right. Yeah, I hear
Y'all
you.
keep going
Okay.
because we got the recording. So
Okay, cool. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, but yours was, it was based off, she used history
Mm-hmm.
inspire them to maybe do the next thing. So do you think it should be, a teacher talking to a student, and then use history and use other type things to inspire them to go more technologically advanced, or what would you say?
That's a good idea. I was just thinking of maybe even, highlighting teachers in general and just sort of speak to why that's an important role in and of itself. And then I'm trying to think of like famous teachers or educators that are out there. I mean, who's coming to mind now is Jill Biden, but that's just because,
Yeah,
she's
but
just first in my mind.
she's the what she I mean that's actually a great point because she's the first lady to have ever been a teacher, and that's a really big
Right.
deal. For teachers around the world to have, or around the country to have, a former teacher in the president's ear.
Exactly.
That's a big deal, no matter who's the president.
Yeah, so I would just sort of speak to how why teachers are important, why they're so critical, and then also just sort of weave in STEM in there as well. So there's multiple ways you can sort of tackle that. I would, since I do like the idea of telling other people's stories as examples, I would probably try to highlight a few teachers who have made a difference, who are now doing, big things and whatnot. And so I was thinking of her. um, George Washington Carver comes to mind as well, because I believe he was a professor as well, like, way back when in Tuskegee. And
Well, and
so,
speaking of Tuskegee, you can even go as far back as Booker T. Washington.
exactly, yeah, like the importance of education and, sort of instilling values in the next generation. I would that's how I would try to tackle that. Highlighting the importance of that. So,
Yeah, and even though we could highlight the black teachers, it would not have to be black specific because it's
mhm,
even though that would be cool, to include them, but that is some great examples. And I know you're not an illustrator because you told me that yourself.
right.
But they're going to have to do their own illustrations for this. So what are some things that you think should be highlighted as far as illustrations? Obviously, a picture of the actual person they're talking about.
Mhm,
What do you
mhm,
think? What do you think if it, in your, I'm sure you had some kind of input of what you wanted in your book. So
right.
what were some things you wanted to be highlighted as far as illustrations in your book that they maybe could do something similar in theirs?
So before I even started writing the book or thinking about illustrations, I went to Barnes and Noble and just sort of spent an hour or two looking through kids' books and just sort of seeing the flow of it. And
Okay.
like one thing that kids' books all have in common is they're very bright, right? Lots of colors, just lots of just brightness and light. And so I think when it comes to illustration, whatever you decide to do, make sure it's very dynamic in its coloring, like just really bold colors, because that really grabs kids' attention, right? They like every TV show is like really, really bright and just like, like that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I would say. Whatever you draw, make sure the colors are very, very vibrant and just eye-catching.
Yeah, and speaking of eye catchy too, I know a regular book for you and me is different than a kid's book.
Mhm.
How big should the font be?
Well, that sort of depends on how many pages. Like, well, if it's 1,500 words, right? And I don't know how many pages it's
Fifteen
going to
hundred is the
be.
maximum.
Is a
1,500.
maximum? Okay. I would probably go less than that if it's a kid's book. Like first to third grade is like they're starting like to know to learn words and sentences, or I assume, right? But how big the font, the bigger the better. I mean, I would say like 20. It also depends on the style of the font as well. But I think if you want to like make it a kid's book and sort of like highlight the pictures, I would say, definitely bigger than, the standard 12-point font, but not like obnoxiously big either. I didn't really think about font size too much when it came to my book, to be honest, because mine was more content focused. And so, like I couldn't even tell you what size the font was in my book. But I think it was at least like 14, 15, 18, something like that. So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and with this, they have to actually make their own binding pages. The
Oh,
whole,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's really cool, and it's a really in-depth thing. But what I don't want them to get bogged down, getting worried about the content, because the other part of it is
Mhm.
so hard in itself, and actually creating and doing the illustrations, and everything has to be original. It can be computer generated or hand drawn, but it has to be
Mhm.
original. But what the last thing I wanted them to happen is to get so stuck on the content where they can't move forward
Okay.
to anything else.
That's fair. Yeah, that's definitely fair. If that's the case, maybe, I mean, think first of how many pages you want it to be and sort of work backwards, perhaps. Like if I want like a 12-page book, and I want to have, 10 illustrations in that book, maybe write the words around the pages. That might be helpful if you don't want to focus on the content, right? So I'm just thinking out loud, but that's one way I would try to maybe tackle that, was like work backwards, like from what you want your finished product to be, and then create the words around that finished product.
Okay, yeah, and it's not that I don't want them to not worry about the content. I just don't want them to get bogged down on it to where it's a huge obstacle,
Mm,
stumbling block.
I
Um,
see.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's such an in-depth deal, and it's something new that we're tackling because and we've lost this for 3 years because of COVID, so we're just
Mm,
not getting back into
mhm.
this. So it's the she's she had to re-enter on her other device. So she's in here twice now.
Okay.
But I just with the on the content side, I just what are some things to look for and things to really and what are some common mistakes that that they need to avoid when it comes to actually writing the content.
I would say using big words. And so for me, like when it came to content, that's when I spent like a lot of time in the bookstore, just seeing how, because kids and even teenagers, we communicate very differently. And so I had to write a few different drafts trying to, like, I don't want to say dumb down, but make the content child friendly. And so yeah, I would just focus on how to get the point across in the most simplest, in like less words as possible, especially if you want to like highlight, pictures and things like that. So I would encourage them just to take some time, just to look online to see how kids books, how they flow, because a lot of it is like repetition and alliteration. That's a very common thing amongst kids books, or whether you want it to rhyme even. I've seen like poetry in kids
Ah,
books. That could be something, and that's an easy way to like not have so many words and like just sort of have a flow. So yeah, when it comes to content, I would just like spend 20 minutes just online and just looking through kids' books, ebooks and whatnot, to get some ideas on how you want it to flow.
I never thought about that. And see, I'm glad you're helping us out because that's a great point. Now and yeah, and they actually and then what they'll do once they submit it, they'll actually have to read it to the judges like they're reading to a
Mm,
classroom.
mhm.
So that's why I was asking about font size. Is that something while they were reading to be able to, something that was
Oh,
seen by everybody?
yeah. I mean, if so, are the judges going to also be reading it with them, or they're like more so
The
listening?
judges will have already read it and
Okay.
reviewed it, but then they'll come in and present it as like they are a teacher reading to
Mhm.
a room of children.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I would just make sure the font size is big enough for you to see it while showing to the judge. And I would say probably like 16 is a good size, 16, 18 with that.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it's okay. And I know you're not a design expert, but looking at the amount of space on the page, if you're really focused on the brightness and the colors and the pictures, it would be okay to have a little bit more blank space than you would in a regular book.
I would, yeah, definitely. I mean, fill the blank space with like an image or something like that. Like not necessarily have white blank space, but yeah, you definitely have to fill the entire word with page with words, for sure. Yeah, I would make sure that a sentence there's no like run-on sentences where a sentence starts on one page and finishes on another page. I'd make sure at least the full sentence is complete. But yeah, you don't have to fill the entire page with words. Definitely not for a kid's book, for sure. So
So the simpler the
mm,
better.
yeah.
Because
Hmm.
we read books all the time and they're in mid word and you got to turn the page and go back and see what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and especially on a time limit, you really want to make sure that you're not holding yourself up on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Miss Smith, you got any questions or any of the kids have questions?
Y'all have any questions? None? But they said they don't have any. But I definitely want to thank you for taking your time out. This is new for us, so I think they have some big ideas, but to speak with someone who's actually made a actual book is a plus.
Well, happy to. It's definitely achievable. Like, I have no authorship background, no illustration background. I just had an idea and I wanted to get it on paper. And that's just as simple as that. If you have an idea, get it out. You'd be surprised at yourself how much you can accomplish if you just like do it. And so, yeah, just don't like second guess yourself. Like you can definitely do this is what I would say. So.
Yeah, we have 4 really good students doing this, and Miss Smith's the head of our multimedia academy, so they have really high tech availability to be able to come up with the illustrations, and they actually have to test it in a kid's setting twice as part of the competition. It has to be documented.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to show you our finished product because it's really cool to have a published author that's done something similar to this to be able to get
Right.
That's pretty amazing that your school has these resources. Like my school didn't have anything like that. And so it's really heartwarming to see that, you know, kids are being encouraged to be creative in this way and have the resources to do so. So I definitely commend your school for sure.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I say this all the time. You know, somebody like you went to NYU and Cal Berkeley. You know, you went to 2 of the top colleges in the country, but yet you're saying yourself you did not have the kind of resources that we have here.
Facts.
And here's like we don't ever have anything. I'm like, that is not true.
Mhm. Yeah.
What is one thing, I will ask you this, what is one thing that you would suggest to them, I guess to start the thought process on how to take because I think y'all were maybe discussing it when we first got on, and technology, it'll play right for you sometime and sometime it won't.
Right.
But what is one thing that you or one piece of advice that you would give them as a good starting point for creating a book for a children's story?
I would say like think back onto your own childhood and what inspired and encouraged you and sort of like channel that into the finished product. And so if you're someone like as a little girl, I was always inspired by other people's stories. That's why I wanted my book to highlight other people's stories. So I thought it could inspire other kids as well. And so I would definitely just think upon your own childhood and what got you excited, what piqued your interest, what kept your interest, and you know, sort of channel that into the finished product. And that can like there's no limits to how this can look. Like we mentioned, it could be a poem, it can be, you know, a rap or something like that, right? There's really no limits onto how it's going to look, but it has to be inspiring. And so, especially for kids. And so I would just think upon your own childhood and what inspired you, and just implement that into the finished product for sure.
Okay.
It's good stuff. And I never thought about having it rhyme. That's a great point. I never would have thought about that if she hadn't have said something.
Kids remember songs and rhymes. Like think of how many nursery rhymes we had growing up, right? And so, yeah, it's just a thought.
Well, the 4 of y'all have anything else? I know she's tight on schedule right now. She's nice enough to join us today, all the way from sunny California. So, anybody else got anything? And we're actually almost out of school anyway. But just wanted to, if anybody else has anything.
We have one question. Yeah, or you tell me and I say.
What kind of imagery would you suggest for the book?
Landria asked, what kind of images or imagery would you suggest for the book?
I would suggest whatever it is has to be really bright and lots of colors and just very eye-catching. And so if this book is about, you know, STEM or math, science, I would have, you know, things like planets, right? And I would have like a microscope. I would have like really colorful objects that are sort of in the theme of STEM in the book itself. But no matter what it is, it has to be very colorful and very bright because that's what, you know, makes a kid's book stand out from an adult or a chapter book, right? It's just the imagery. And so, but yeah, I would just sort of channel in STEM imagery, you know, astronauts, spaceships, things of that nature.
Yeah, really showing. Yeah, I agree. You know, showing the actual instruments and the actual lab stuff. You know, little kids think that stuff's really
right.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys have anything else? They're actually in a different room at the school, but
Go Go ahead.
How would you start the book off?
How would I start the book
Andrea
off? Was that
asked, how would you start the book off?
oh man, put me on the spot. Oof. So I think with any story, like any good story has a conflict, right? And by the end of the story, the conflict is solved. And so, like for my book that I wrote, it started off with a little girl who was struggling with her math homework. She had a problem. And then by the end of the book, the teacher or her mom had solved the problem for her, right? And so I would start it out with like, yeah, just a conflict. Someone could be, discouraged in something. Someone could be lost and, they need to find their way back to something. But yeah, just whatever, like that really resonates with me is like solving problems, And so I think that's how I would do it. You don't have to do it that way, but I would definitely start with a problem that by the end of the story, it gets solved in some way.
All right, anybody else? That's some good questions, and that's some great info. Man, we thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. These are really good questions.
Yeah,
So
I just said this is a good group. I think they can do well in it. All I really do is just find people to help them out.
Well, thank you so much again for taking your time. I know that you have a busy schedule, and I can only imagine. I just asked Pike to send me the name of your book again because I'm gonna buy one.
oh, I appreciate that.
And
Thanks.
that's number one, not only to support you for assisting and supporting us, but so they can see a book hands-on and
Mhm.
and I think it'll give them an extra touch or a piece of pride that I actually talked to the person that wrote it. I actually spoke with the author. So once again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to help us.
No problem. Happy to do it. And like I said, you all can definitely get this done and achieve it. It's just a matter of doing it, right? So I look forward to seeing the final product, and I definitely have faith in you all that it'll be something amazing. So yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, and again, thanks. And I'll actually see you in a few weeks in class, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's right. Yes. Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later, my friend.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.